Bushido, born of Japan's feudal crucible, is less a rigid code than a philosophical synthesis, an attempt to reconcile the warrior's violent vocation with moral transcendence. Its origins lie in the existential tension between chaos and order, death and meaning. Emerging around the 12th century as samurai ascended from provincial enforcers to stewards of power, Bushido wove strands of Zen, Shinto, and Confucianism into an ethos that sought to dignify the act of living and dying by blade. Zen Buddhism provided the base. Its teachings on impertinence stripped life of illusion, urging warriors to confront mortality with equanimity. To die well, in Zen's view, was to grasp the ephemeral nature of all things. Shinto infused this with reverence for ancestral bonds and purity of intent, framing loyalty as a sacred duty to lineage and land. Confucianism imposed structure, grafting social harmony and hierarchical obligation onto the samurai's role as both destroyer and guardian. At its core, Bushido grappled with paradox. It elevated righteousness as the North Star of conduct, yet required absolute submission to lords whose command might defy personal ethics. It celebrated benevolence, while demanding brutality in battle. This duality mirrored the samurai's existential reality. To kill was their function, yet to transcend base savagery was their aspiration. The sword became a metaphor, its edge a symbol for moral clarity, its sheath a reminder of restraint. By the Edo period, as peace rendered swords ornamental, Bushido turned inward. Philosophers like Yamaga Soko reimagined it as a path of balance between literary and martial arts, transforming the warrior into a moral paragon whose discipline mirrored cosmic order. Here, Bushido shed practicality and embraced abstraction, a way to ritualize existence in a world no longer defined by war. Bushido's virtues are not static ideals, but living contradictions, principles forged in the realm of feudalism, where survival demanded both brutality and transcendence. Each virtue is a mirror reflecting the samurai's existential struggle, to wield power without being corrupted by it, to serve death while honouring life. To dissect them is to unravel a philosophy that sought to dignify violence through ritual and mortality through meaning. Ji is the spine of Bushido, the unwavering commitment to ethical action even when it courts destruction. It transcends mere righteousness, demanding alignment with Tenmei, the mandate of heaven, an impersonal cosmic order. In practice, Ji required samurai to act as arbiters of justice, often in service to lords whose motives were murky. This tension birthed a brutal pragmatism. A samurai might execute an innocent if duty demanded it, yet still believe himself morally intact. Ji thus becomes a form of existential surrender, a trust that adherence to principle, however flawed, aligns the self with universal truth. The sword, in this light, is not a tool of violence, but a symbol of moral incision, cutting through illusion to expose what must be done. Courage in Bushido is not fearlessness, but the mastery of fear through Zen's Mushin, a state where thought dissolves and action flows instinctively. To cultivate you, samurai engaged in memento mori practices, meditating on rotten corpses, sleeping in graveyards, or composing death poems. This was not nihilism, but a radical acceptance of impermanence. By internalizing death, the warrior could act with a clarity unclouded by self-preservation. Yet you also carried a social dimension. Courage was performative, a theatre of resolve, meant to inspire allies and paralyze foes, the scream before a strike, the stoic endurance of torture. These were not mere acts of bravery, but rituals to transmute terror into a collective purpose. the most paradoxical of virtues. Jin demanded mercy from a class trained to kill without hesitation. It arose from Confucian humanism, which viewed the ruler as a shepherd responsible for the flock's welfare, a daimyo showing clemency to a rebellious village, or a warrior sparing a defeated enemy, became acts of moral theatre, proof that power could be tempered by empathy. Yet Jin was also strategic. Leniency could secure loyalty, while ruthlessness bred resentment. This duality reveals Bushido's unsentimental core. Benevolence was not weakness, but a calculated exercise of control, a way to legitimize violence by framing it as protection. The samurai sword, then, was both destroyer and lifeline, its use justified only when balanced by Jin. Rei ritualized hierarchy into sacred order. Every bow, every honorific, every prescribed interaction between lord and vassal was a performative act, reinforcing the Confucian 5 relationships that governed society. But Rei also acknowledged the Shinto belief that all things, enemies, animals, even weapons, harbored kami, the divine Shinto spirits. To disrespect a foe was to insult the gods. To neglect one's sword was to dishonor the smith spirit. Thus Rei transcended mere politeness, becoming a way to harmonize with unseen forces threading the universe. Even in tea ceremony, a practice many samurai adopted, every gesture was a meditation on humility, a reminder that grace could exist alongside the blood-stained hands of war. In a world of shifting alliances and political deceit, Makoto was the samurai's anchor. It demanded absolute congruence between thought, word and deed. To lie was not merely dishonorable, it was a form of self-erosion, a betrayal of one's heart and mind. This ideal found expression in warrior tales, where heroes like Minamoto no Yoshitsune chose death over broken vows. Yet Makoto also had a dark pragmatism. Samurai were permitted deception in espionage or wartime, provided it served their lord. Truth in Bushido was thus situational, a tool to be wielded with precision, never squandered. The virtue lay not in rigid honesty, but in the purity of one's intent. Meo was a samurai's currency, a social and spiritual capital painstakingly accumulated and easily lost. Unlike European chivalric honour, often tied to lineage, Bushido's honour was earned through deeds. A single act of cowardice could taint a family for generations, while a heroic death could redeem decades of mediocrity. This obsession with reputation stemmed from Shinto's emphasis on purity. Dishonour was a stain requiring ritual cleansing, often through seppuku, ritual suicide. The linchpin of Bushido, Juji bound the warrior to a lord with bonds stronger than blood, rooted in Confucian filial piety. It framed service as a sacred duty, transcending personal desire. The 47 Ronin epitomized this ideal, avenging their master's death, despite knowing it would doom them. Yet Chugi was also a survival tactic in Japan's fractured feudal landscape. Loyalty ensured patronage, protection and purpose in a world where shifting allegiances were common. Philosophically, it mirrored Zen's teaching of Muga, no self, the dissolution of ego into a greater cause. To betray one's lord was to fracture the cosmos itself, spurning the harmony Bushido sought to uphold. The 7 virtues form a spiritual labyrinth, demanding the samurai navigate contradictions. To kill, yet cherish life. To obey, yet retain moral autonomy. To honour self, while obliterating ego. This tension is not a flaw, but the essence of Bushido, a recognition that virtue, like the sword, is double-edged. It is a philosophy of extremes, born in an era where death was omnipresent, yet it sought to answer timeless questions. How does one live meaningfully in a transient world? How does power coexist with grace? Bushido's answer lies in the act of balance itself. The warrior's path was not one of resolution, but of perpetual tension, a dance along the blade's edge, where every step risked catastrophe, yet also promised transcendence. In this dance, the virtues were not rules, but tools, chiseling the raw stone of human frailty into something resembling honor. Speak soon, friends.